5 o'clock. It's time for Natchitoches Parish School Board Committee meeting as a whole, November 2nd, 2020. Please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Another item, please speak directly into the microphone so we can record everything that's being said, and the general public can also understand what's being said. Thank y'all for all coming today. Reverend Harris is not going to make it, and so we can go ahead and get kicked off. If you would like to speak to an agenda item, please secure a form in the back of the room and pass it forward, complete as needed. Mr. Cozad, do we have any comments from the public?
No.
We have no comments. Thank you. Any old business?
I have a question under old business.
Yes, ma'am.
The board doc software, how's that going?
We're, Superintendent Eloy and Mr. Cozad, I think we're going to give us a little update during his report. Were you not? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Good deal.
And in fact, it's time for that. Superintendent Eloy.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all. I want to start off with, as I've told numerous people who have asked about COVID issues, we will start every monthly board meeting with a rundown of our COVID numbers. Again, this is an attempt to be as transparent as possible. We have a lot of people who are very concerned, for good reason, about COVID. And what we have seen over the course of the weeks we've been in school is that a lot of people jump to conclusions, and there becomes, as you would expect in small towns, a lot of gossip and miscommunication, and things happen where people make some assumptions. And there have been some folks who believe there's been outbreaks at different schools. I want to reiterate, we have had no outbreaks. An outbreak is when you see multiple cases coming from within that cluster, or from within the schoolhouse. We have had multiple cases at the same school, but those cases were found to be unrelated and there wasn't transmission between groups. And so to give you the numbers, again, last month we had 9 students and 8 staff. This month we have had 16 students test positive and 6 staff. Those numbers are still in line with what we talked to Dr. White and LDH with numbers that they would expect from community exposure and transmission. They are proportional to our student population. We're not seeing any disproportionality or anything like that. And when you compare them to other districts, we're within the statistical range that we would want to be in. Although obviously our goal is to have as few as possible. These aren't alarming cases, and we are able to prevent further transmission through our policies and procedures. Another update on COVID, and this is just a matter for parents and also employees to know about. There has been an update of the CDC recommendations, and those will change how LDH enforces quarantines. We now know that close contact is through 15 minutes of an accumulated 15 minutes rather over the course of 48 hours. Prior to this, it was that accumulated 15 minutes over the course of the day, but now they're saying it can be over that 48 hours. But I don't think we've seen a large influx of quarantines due to that change in the CDC guidance. Along with the COVID discussion, we had a really productive meeting earlier in the month with the doctors in that area. And we're actually seeing throughout the different regions, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between LDH and local clinicians. And that's not typical of just Natchitoches. We're finding that everywhere, is where we are getting a lot of information from LDH on what the CDC is telling us and what we're supposed to do and what we have to do based on that BSI guidance. And that information isn't always trickling down to the local clinicians. And I actually had a phone call with the superintendent of another district the other day where they were having this exact issue. Well, we were very proactive about that. And what we did was we brought in all the players, whether it was the school district, we had a few board members involved, we had the local clinicians, and we had all the folks from LDH to get on there and say, hey, this is what we're having to deal with. And there were some times where they just simply did not agree. but I believe they were at least able to understand where each other were coming from and open up a dialogue so that those lines of communication can continue to expand and understand where we're all at. And I think at the very least that lets parents, teachers, etc. know where we are making our decisions, which is we're getting the best experts we can, which are being provided to us from LDH, and we're going with their advice because, as I've said before, none of us in this room that I'm aware of are medical doctors. Another issue to do with COVID is there's been a lot of discussion or questions that have come to us through our Human Resources Department, and also some of you on the board have probably got these questions as well. What happens if I am quarantined multiple times? What happens if I am positive, but then I'm quarantined for my child? And we've actually seen cases where staff members have been quarantined over 2 or 3 times in the span of, we've only been in school since September. So what happens there? What I can tell you is it's not necessarily good news. We've contacted the lawyers that advise all the school districts in the state, or most of the school districts in the state, and that's Hammond, Seals, and Geis. And what they tell us is we have the 10 federal days that we can offer people that are specifically related to the 6 different COVID issues. That's a positive, that's a family member is positive, all those 6 different things that you can use those days for. After you've exhausted those 10 days, and hopefully your quarantine goes across weekends, and so you're not utilizing all 10 days in that manner. After you use those, then you have your 10 days that you typically get from the school district. And that's in a normal year, you have those 10 sick days. So you would utilize those. Then the third thing you would do is you would utilize any accrued sick leave that you have at your disposal. We are aware that there are people who do not have any accrued sick leave, whether it's because they just haven't accrued it or because they're a new hire. Currently, as things stand, there is no ability for us as a school district to do anything outside of that framework that's been given to us by both our legal team and also by normal HR practices. We are obviously empathetic with everyone's situation, but as someone told me, this is not a situation that we have caused or anyone has caused. This is a situation that has been brought upon all of us, and unfortunately this is going to affect whether it's the teacher, the janitor, the food service worker, or perhaps even the superintendent. It can affect anyone, and we will do it in the most equitable manner, which will mean that whether you're the superintendent or you're a teacher, we will take leave in that same manner. Outside of that, unfortunately, we have very few tools to work with to do anything outside of that. If you do have any HR questions, those things aren't going to change unless the federal government grants us more leave. But if you have any questions, concerns, that you want to talk to someone, please reach out to HR. Are they going to be able to wave a magic wand? No. But a lot of times they can clear things up for us and make things a little more helpful. So that's what we can offer right now. But as information changes, we will offer that to you constantly. Getting away from COVID for a moment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Move on.
Yeah.
In reference to the indicated number of cases, we'll get a report from all of the schools as to what the status is as far as COVID cases. When you said we'd get a report.
Yes, ma'am. So what I'm giving you right now is the district report. I can give the board a more, I have it that I can email to y'all that gets a little more granular. The problem with putting that out to everyone is that is a form of identifiable information when you say, and this is purely hypothetical, if you say there are 2 cases at Natchitoches Central, that is a form of identification. And so we have to be very careful with doing that because of HIPAA. But as far as the board goes, I can give the board those individual numbers based on school.
But how would that be a form of identification when you're not giving names or anything of that nature? I thought it had a person's name. That affects confidentiality when you give names.
Yes, ma'am. And what we're purely going based on our legal recommendations, which is that any form or fashion that you can identify an individual, and although you're right, it's an obscure form of identifiable information, it is a means by which if someone wanted to identify an individual, they could use that piece to.
But the board, we as a board have a right to.
Yes, ma'am, I can share that with
all
y'all.
the different schools.
Yes, ma'am.
And one more, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
In reference to the quarantine, I know that these are the number of total cases, but there have been several instances in different schools where there's been quarantine situations.
Yes, ma'am. So we are sharing with, I share with the board anytime there's a quarantine over 5 individuals. I share that with y'all so that you can have a heads up of those situations. We have had several situations where there's been a large number, perhaps a class. What I can tell you is we're working through those, in some cases even using video footage to determine that a student wasn't in contact with the positive case so they don't have to quarantine. Our goal is to, when possible, not quarantine if we can do that safely, because we know parents want their kids in school, kids want to be in school, we want to be at work, and so we want to do that as much as possible, but ultimately there are times where we get to the point where it's just unavoidable. And I can tell you, when working with LDH, whether it be Ms. Calandra, Miss Dr. Martha White, rather, they are adamant about trying to work with us as much as possible and be as helpful as possible, while at the same time not, sacrificing safety. All right, so getting away from COVID for a short time, we are instituting, I think Ms. Parish posted this today on our social media and our website, but we are instituting 3 superintendent advisory councils. There's, and I think one of them was already somewhat in existence, but we're trying to make it more robust, and that's a parent advisory council, a student advisory council, and a teacher advisory council. Basically, this is a means where each school can have a representative to come and speak with me on a quarterly basis on what their issues are. And we're doing those 3 different ones because parent issues aren't always the same as teacher issues, and student issues as well. The student one will be confined to 7th grade or above, and that's simply because oftentimes 2nd graders don't have a whole lot to contribute as far as policy and things of that nature. But we really want to push the idea that we want collaboration, we want people's input, and that's another means of doing that. On a very exciting, happy note, Halloween was this past weekend, and we were able to go to every elementary school and share with them, pass out some candy and do it in a safe way. And several members of the staff here dressed up and followed me along that 6-hour journey across the district, and we were able to see a lot of people, and it was a lot of fun, and I think it was a very positive thing for the kids, the teachers, and for ourselves. Another exciting thing that Ms. Hicks will be talking about later is we have extended the ability for all students in the district to eat for free. That was initially extended just till December 31st. It is now for the entirety of the school year, and that's at every location. So that's very exciting.
That's great.
It's great. Strategic meeting, we had a Saturday meeting of staff members, and the mayor was there, Dr. McAllister was there, and some other local dignitaries and Natchitoches famous folk. And we talked about the things we need to do to make NPSB what we want it to be, an A district. And it was perhaps one of the best meetings of my entire professional career. It was emotional, it was energetic, it was great, and you would have thought there was a lot of people who came into it on a Saturday meeting kind of rolling their eyes, not wanting to be there because it was a Saturday, and to a T they left telling me that it was a very productive meeting, and that was the first of probably 2 or 3 meetings that we're going to have to really push the strategic planning. The first part of the strategic plan is presenting our data, where we are now. And there's some good things, but there's a lot of things that need work. The second part of that, so we have the data, then it's what are our goals? What are our 1-year goals? What are our 5-year goals? And then finally, we have our data, we have our goals. What is the plan to execute those goals, to make those things happen? The bulk of that plan is coming to fruition. You will be seeing a draft of that in December, and we hope to have the final complete version ready for the first of the year, which I think is a really good line of demarcation. And then ACT scores did come in over the break. We saw that the state for the past 3 years has gone down. We actually had a 0.2 of a point bump. We are now at a 17.3, which it's good always to show growth, but I'll just be honest with you, 17.3 is not where any of us want to be as far as our average for the district. We would want to at least be at an 18, because that's where you're able to easily or more easily get into colleges, and also for accountability purposes, but we really need to be in that 20-21 range. But that is going to be an uphill battle, but it's something that I think is, we've already had meetings about that we all think is doable. The board docs update. We have had the first meeting, which was a meeting really with Ms. Kanika, that allowed her, because she's going to be the main point person for board docs, and we have another meeting coming up that's going to include some of the other folks. Once that meeting occurs, which I believe happens this week or next week, is that correct, Mr. Kozan?
The second half of the training for her and me is Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And then once that's completed, we will schedule training for the whole board and everyone that will use it.
And it is essential that we get with y'all and we make sure that y'all are able to attend that meeting, because really what's going to happen is you're going to be able to put agenda items on without having to do emails and all those things. But it is a system that's very user friendly, but it still requires some training. So Mr. Kozat, after he has that next meeting, and Ms. Kanika will be getting with y'all to do that. And finally, I'm not patting myself on the back by any stretch, but as part of my employment, there was a promise made to the board that I would be fulfilling something that you had put in your requirements for a superintendent, and that was a doctoral degree. And I'm happy to report that I've successfully defended my dissertation and will be graduating in December. So that being said, that's all I have for the
Dr. Eloy, you kind of took the new business out. The first time we were going to introduce you as a board as Dr. Eloy. However, we'll do it again. Dr. Eloy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that good information. A lot of good things going on in the district. I agree with what you're saying with the ACT scores. However, this one last year has been, not everyone tested. Those that did test it were at different junctures, and so perhaps next year will be a much better year for it.
Yes, sir. No, I mean, and we should always celebrate growth, but I always feel like I never want to spin anything for, whether it's for the board, for our teachers, or for anyone in the community. A 17.3 from a 17.1 is positive, it's growth, but we can't accept that as a score that we want for our district. So I agree with you though.
Okay, consent agenda. Any other new business, board members? Okay, let's examine the consent agenda. Any questions? Mr. Danzy, your report, please.
Yes, sir. Item number 1, take appropriate action on bids. We do not have any bids that I'm aware of at this point. Item number 2, receive transportation report. Mr. John.
Good evening, how's everyone doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. Alfred was unable to be here tonight, he'll be here on the normal board meeting on Thursday, so I still wanted to be able to present a quick update on where we are. As I know last time, Alfred had said we had 13 in the pipeline, 3 of those have passed to become drivers, we got 7 left on the board, 1's testing on this Friday, so we continue to recruit and try to enhance our team with the great staff we currently have. Obviously, it's a tough time with COVID and other reasons, but we're managing through that and appreciate all the support from the district, our team members, and the community as a whole to continue to grow our driver and monitor pool. And then outside of that, really, we continue to work with the principals, and now we're kind of working individually just to iron out any other questions or challenges on routes or anything else, but overall, it has continued to be positive from our standpoint, hopefully from your standpoint as well, and just appreciate the opportunity to be able to be up here and give the good but quick transportation report. So, Any questions or anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, thanks.
Item number 3, receive the tax commission report, Mr. Watson.
Well, on the first page there, I've worked with Jerry on renaming a few things, just a little bit more clear. This is calendar year, and this is a month by month. The page 1 is a month by month breakdown of up or over based on the previous year. If you go to page 2, this is actually the year-to-date cumulative. So this is once again calendar year collections, and for the year we're up 4.09%. If you look at the bottom, the last column at the bottom, on this second page, are y'all on the same page here? Okay. This is good news considering that we're in COVID. The numbers are dropping off a little bit more than expected, but still for the year we're 4.09% above LY, and that is a good thing. As you look at the top part of this page, you'll see 2017, 18, 19, and 2020, the numbers keep rising in our collections, so that means that things are still moving up in the town as far as sales tax collections. Okay, the next page is the salary enhancement tax. This is month by month, once again in comparison, and I really look at the next page after that, which is the cumulative. No, wait, the sales. Hang on. Mine's kind of faded. I don't know to y'all. Anyhow, overall, it's looking about the same. It seems to be doing very well. Sales tax enhancement. So that's all very good for the teachers. This page here, which is the next page, that says sales tax collections year to date. This is the one I changed. If you see at the bottom, it says Gen Fund now. It used to say adjust tax. Anybody know what adjust tax means? Yeah. It's actually the general fund sales tax collection. I didn't know that. Well, so that's what this is. This shows the set is the salary enhancement tax. So that gives you a feel for where we were at the same time last year as compared to this year. You can see that in both cases we're up. This is all good news. Now we did our budget based on sustaining last year's numbers. So as long as the trends continue, we will be able to do a budget adjustment in the future in the upward position, going upward. I eliminated 2 reports. We had sales tax collections, but this one is sales tax distributions. Sales tax distribution report tells you actually how much was distributed to us. Sales tax collections is simply how much he distributed, but he may have withheld something because it was in litigation. I'm sitting there going, well, what we really want to know is how much we are actually distributing to the school board. And so this one here is only for our fiscal year, which is July, September, and October. This is month by month adjustments, but the next page is the cumulative. So if you look at the next page here, which is the bar going this way, you can see that we have almost a 7.2% increase at the end of September in sales tax collections. That's still very good news. We had a very healthy July and August. We were down a bit in September, but overall very good. Now from my restaurant experience, September was strangely off. However, October was a very strong month for both so I'm hoping that our next month's collections will be higher than expected. The last page is motor vehicles. This is gee whiz information because these numbers here are included in the previous numbers. Okay? I didn't know if anybody ever explained that to you. But I'm inquiring
These numbers are just, so see in the month of September, a 48% increase in collections over last year at the same time in automobiles. Now obviously this is sales from the month of August, and what was being collected in September, so that's a significant increase. But these numbers are included in the previous graphs, okay? So overall, very happy with sales tax collections. Always nervous about that based on the pandemic and everything, but right now everything is going well. There are no further questions with that?
I have a question. With the teachers and the parish, with their sales tax checks, would there be any cuts?
No ma'am, not at this point.
So
That's
they
all,
don't-
the collections are over and above last year.
Right, because they owe money back in July. They don't have to,
That was paid back, Ms.
Yeah,
Becky.
okay, everything was paid back?
They took that out the first part of the year.
Yeah.
So it's just, from here on, it's just as it's being collected.
Unless there's another mistake, we hope not.
Well, let's hope not.
Any more questions? Item number 4, receive budget update, Mr. Watson.
Okay. Looking at this, paper here, once again, column 2 is the 2019 actual collections at that same point in time, as column 3 is actual this year, 2021. And so it says 2019, but that's 1920. Actual is 2021. So that gives you a feel on the first line, revenues. Last year at this time, I mean, there's not much variance there. It's about an extra $120,000 worth of collections in general fund revenues. The one that is interesting is child revenue, child nutrition. 1.6 million versus only 173,000. This is most concerning. But of the 1.6, 752,000 of that, I believe, is a transfer adjustment that was made. But still, even with that adjustment, it's significant. I was going to ask Ms. Hicks to come up and share a report right after I'm done with this to explain what the revenue situation with that is. That has to do with starting late and the number of children being served. The impact to us would be the fact that the salaries and the benefits are fixed regardless of how many children you serve. And now the Title I, where you see a significant difference is under the other purchases and then supplies. That just means she's spending her money sooner than she did at the same time last year. This is something I've requested that Julie and I have set goals to have most of the spending for all the federal grants wrapped up by March 15th, instead of waiting to the last minute and trying to get the stuff spent early. Because honestly, any spending after May 1, you're really spending for the next year. So we're trying to get all this money spent, scheduled, having a certain percentage of it completed, and by certain months of the year, and having 100% of the money spent for these programs by March 15th. So these are some of our goals. So you'll see the spending. The money is there to cover it, and or it will be as soon as the request was in. So at this point, are there any other questions that I can answer? I was going to have Ms. Hicks come up and share with her experience with feeding, and it does impact our food service, our child nutrition program. Right. Okay, so
I do have a question.
Certainly.
Mr. Washington and Dr. Eroy, we talked about pulling together a VRA training for our principals. Are we a little closer to that than we were last month?
Do you want to answer that?
I've been gone for the last 2 weeks. I was hoping to have that in place. I think that it would be nice to have that done before our next meeting in a month. The thing is, I was just that ball got dropped because I went into COVID quarantine, and but that is very important to get that done as soon as possible. Actually, I know we're having a principals meeting next week, I don't
Unfortunately,
think that's not,
yeah.
that's not gonna be an appropriate time.
well, and it's not, whether it's appropriate or not, that's gonna be 8 hours jam-packed. And so what we could probably do is what we've been doing with curriculum is do little cohorts of similar schools, 4 at a time, and that way they can meet with you on a more intimate basis to get probably the knowledge and them.
I think that's the best approach, that
I
way
think
you don't get lost 15, 16, or 20 people in a room.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we group it by the funds, because you know we have certain schools under certain funds,
Yeah.
if we at least get those principals from those schools, we can talk about that one fund.
We're rapidly getting close to the midway point
Yes.
where their budgets are still being spent, and like we had that one principal that was not totally aware of how that VR E-fund works.
I think that can definitely happen between now and next board meeting.
That's great.
I'll be honest with you though, I mean, the little Hurricane Laura stuff is gonna be impactful to those BRE funds this year. It's gonna be, it's unusual. I would like to give an update before, Ms. Hicks gets up here about some things I've learned from FEMA. Now FEMA is a federal program. It's gonna be long, lengthy, lots of paperwork. But we have a section 404, which will give us 75% refund on anything we spend as long as we.
406.
There's a 404. The 406 is the next thing I'll talk about. There's two basic areas. There's a 404, and that will allow you to fix anything that's currently damaged to bring it back pre-Hurricane Laura. Then there's a 406 program. I can take any of our facilities and upgrade them, and they pay 75% of that upgrade to strengthen the building to absorb any kind of potential future wind damage or storm damage. They have hundreds of millions of dollars in Baton Rouge that nobody's asking for.
Where did Rose?
Hey, we're doing a proclamation on something else, let's add it.
So I have to go through, it's a procedure. It's gonna take at least a full year to get moving on all this stuff, on that part, because we have to identify bringing stuff back to pre-Laura and then going after strengthening our buildings. But it is a 75%, the funds are there. Apparently federal government moves it to Baton Rouge, and they've not had a lot of people request it. So, this is actually, he pointed me in this direction as if to say, please do this, you know. I said, well, so we did have to come up with 25% match, but it is an option in the future to have 75% of a re-strengthening of our buildings and our facilities and to be brought up to speed. Just so that when we have these type of wind events or storm events, it can be covered, it'll be strengthened. Hopefully be able to not have such a dramatic impact on our buildings in the future. So that was exciting to hear about. There's more to all this. This is a lengthy process, the FEMA process, and there's a lot of paperwork even after you get the project done for years after that. But I think it's worth the time.
The water abatement and all that can still be repaired, and then this will be on top of that, another.
This is the 404 is all the previous stuff, and the 406 is in preparation for potential future damage.
Gotcha.
So that's what he distinguished it, and after we talked about bringing everything back to pre-Laura, Hurricane Laura, he pushed me to, this is a great opportunity. Every district should take advantage of it. So apparently there's been a lot of funding going to Baton Rouge to implement this, but not a lot of requests. So it is a lengthy process.
When all the schools are made aware of that particular funding.
Yeah, it still doesn't mean that they're doing it. Yeah, that's right.
And so, in order for us to get that particular funding for upgrading, you said selected process, you would have to apply like this year?
You basically.
I mean, next year, at the beginning of the year?
No, you can actually start the process immediately, which we will in conjunction with the 404. But you basically say, we want to do this to get back to pre-Hurricane Laura, but then we would like to readdress. And I'm thinking of Natchitoches Junior High. We need to get the dome fixed, but we really need to get the dome with a more permanent fix so it doesn't rock so bad when it's being under wind stress.
There was a lot of damage with the roof.
Yes, there was a lot of damage, and it really, it really has a substantial, it doesn't look like it's that damaged, but it's actually, when you get up and examine it, it's actually quite damaged. And, so we can put a lot of Band-Aids on it over time, or we can ask them to help us fix this thing, bring it up to speed. It's a great opportunity that I was not aware of, and I'm not sure a lot of people are really aware of it. So I'd like to take advantage of it.
So you think considering that would be more feasible just to replace it, if we can get the monies?
They are actually talking about, you can even consider tearing down a building and rebuilding it. I mean, it goes that far, but you have to justify this, like you use engineers, you would use engineering to determine what it would take to take your existing building, or you could tear down a portion of your building and rebuild it. There are a lot of options that they're willing to. Their idea is to make sure that when this type of wind damage happens again, your buildings don't need any repair. So that's a great opportunity for us to have 75% of our funding provided through a federal source. It is a lot of paperwork on our side, but it is, I think it's worth the investment.
It's always that with the federal monies in it.
Yeah. It always comes with terms. Okay, any other questions with what I brought up? Okay, I'd like to ask Shauna Hicks to come and do her report.
It's okay, I'm going to move this so I can be heard. In your folders, I placed a little last minute report, and I just want to go over it with you so that everyone is aware sort of why we're where we are in child nutrition right now. I guess I will lead with the good news that the state has given us an opportunity to continue summer feeding through the end of the school year. That's the umbrella we're operating under right now. And that's what is allowing us to feed all the students in the parish for free for the entire school year. So I think that's really great for parents and those who are so affected right now with what we're all going through. As Mr. Wascom pointed out, we do have quite a discrepancy in where we were last year and where we are this year. And I just wanted to point out what's sort of going on. First of all, we had a very late start. Of course, we had the whole month of August practically last year. And this year, we did not start school until September 8th. So all that I have been able to turn in terms of claims would be 17 school days from September. So that's a very small amount. Now the ladies are turning in paperwork, and I anticipate having an October claim by the 10th, being able to turn that in. So, you know, we're just in a different place in terms of number of days. The average lunch attendance for September last year was 6,300. This year is 2,461. So we just have fewer students who are actually eating. Our breakfast numbers last year, we had 2,758 in September. That was the average. And this year our average was 1,579. We also have students who are learning virtually at the high school level on Mondays, and we have roughly 24% of our students learning at home. Now they do have the opportunity, if they want to come and pick up meals, there are forms for that, and they're welcome to every day, but we just find that they are not participating very heavily. So these are the factors that we are dealing with, and I just wanted you to be aware of why the numbers appear as they do.
Ms. Hicks, we briefly spoke about this beforehand. Is this something that they're seeing in every district? Is it more pronounced here?
It is statewide. East Baton Rouge Parish, when we first started school, they were feeding something like 5,500 kids. That's a huge parish. So it is widespread all across the state. It is not unique to our parish.
And is the state offering any solutions to the issue?
Not as of yet. I think that the summer feeding program, the extension that they did on that is trying to help that. But of course, when we're CEP, except for 2 schools in our parish already, I don't think it makes quite the impact that it might make in some other districts. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. we'll keep you updated, and hopefully as the year goes on and we get some normalcy back, we'll see our numbers grow. But in the meantime, we're just trying to take care of our kids and keep everybody fed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go back to number 5, that was number 6, we'll go back to number 5 and see the maintenance report. Mr. Johnson. In your packet.
Mr. Johnson's not here.
Oh, okay.
He has a report in here, very detailed. This is a combination of still recovering, we have started some work on repair our roof. Our main thing is to make sure there's no leaks in any of the facilities. This is also just day-to-day stuff going on as well. Hurricane Delta, you see under Lakeview, ball field lighting damage. Well, that was Hurricane Delta. I didn't know that other than that, we didn't receive any damage from Hurricane Delta. But we did have some, for some reason, not under Hurricane Laura, but under Hurricane Delta, those lights decided to break and fall, kind of, they're just swinging. So they're being reattached. So we've hired Sunstream to get them reattached and put back on. That's it. I didn't actually report on Hurricane Delta specifically, but that's the only report there is for Hurricane Delta. Other than that, it's pretty detailed.
Any other questions?
Yes. I know this is not maintenance, but it is with the, in the area. Any progress on the parking lot?
Yes, I spoke to Charles Hardy. He we really want to get with the neighbors and just sit down and tell them what our intention is. I think maybe this could have been something we applied in the past that just wasn't done, but just to tell them what our intention is. It is deed restricted though.
Yeah,
You cannot,
saw that.
yeah, so we will at some point have to go get the deed restriction adjusted at the city council, to get that, so we have a release from that. So it's not a problem even in the future. But we're going to ask that the neighbors meet with us, and I'm not sure it'll resolve anything, but we're gonna start there. And there should have been some communication with the legal representative, hopefully today, and to try to set this up. I'm trying to get this in motion in the next week or so.
That's great.
We have the contractor who needs to get this done because his bid bond is about to give up, it'll expire. And that's sort of the clock we have running. However, it may, if things get to be legally difficult, it may take longer. But the idea is that we just spend time with everybody, and just tell them what our intention is.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna create noise or traffic or any kind of problem.
Right.
Perhaps that privacy fence will solve.
Well, they may insist that instead of having it 6 foot, to have it 8 foot, which is a reasonable concession, I think. If y'all are okay with that, but the difference in price on 6 foot picket and 8 foot picket is not much difference.
But we need, like you said, we do need to move forward on that.
I am trying with that. The issue is just getting the attorneys to talk to each other. But we really cannot proceed until this issue is resolved, and our attorney, our legal representative would prefer us to get this resolved also with the city council to make a request to release the deed restriction.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Item number 7, we're gonna defer that to December. Item number 7, after that. Item number 8, consider approving memorandum of understanding between Career Compass of Louisiana and Natchitoches School Board. Ms. Pinckney?
Miss Pinckney's not here. She actually has she's at a basketball game for Middle Lab. But she asked me to discuss this with y'all. And if you don't know, Career Compass is an organization that counsels seniors about their prospects for college and career readiness. They come into our schools. They discuss things with students. They will talk to every senior in the district and get them prepared for their next steps. And all this MOU is there had to be some concessions with COVID to say, hey, if you come into our schools, you have to abide by the COVID restrictions, you have to be masked up, social distancing, etc. It's boilerplate type things in the COVID world, and so it's just to allow them to come in. There's no cost associated with this. It's just simply to allow them to enter our schools.
Any questions? Item number 9, discuss current pay structure for long-term subs in Natchitoches Parish.
So Mr. Wasserman and myself have had numerous meetings with a group of long-term subs or uncertified teachers, whatever nomenclature you want to use. But what has come out of that is there are certain things that, have to be what they are in terms of the uncertified teachers. And what I mean by that is there is a monetary value to being certified. That being said, there are some logistics or some policy in place, and really I don't even know if it's policy as much as practice, that are folks who are long-term subs, and in some cases they've been long-term subs for multiple years. They've come to us and they've said, every year I have to start over my 30 days. And so what we were proposing is, what we would like to do is for any individual who's a long-term sub after that first year they would still have to do that 30-day trial period where they have to get that 30 days in order to be classified as a long-term sub. In the succeeding years after that first year, what we would say is we would waive that 30-day period. What that does is it allows them to be compensated in the same way that first, second, third month, to where they're not waiting on a large lump sum of back pay. And so what we would do is we would take away after the first year that 30-day trial period. And this is something that we think would benefit them, but also not really be, it would not be any cost to the district because we're already back paying them in November in a typical year. And what this does is allows them to pay their bills in September and October instead of waiting on this large lump sum to be able to do that.
Y'all aware of how we do it now?
Well, most are. Thank y'all for working with those folks. That's a no-brainer, but we just never thought of it prior, and that's great.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword because we do know that there are some folks who will come in, sign up to be a long-term sub, and then 15 days after they leave. But what we're saying is we discover those issues after their first year. If they've been with us a year, they're probably not going to do that. And so we don't want to penalize them just by the sake of them being classified as that.
A yearly requalifying period.
Exactly.
And you're gonna pay them anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're just not delaying that.
That's right.
Well, this is in reference, this has to do with the TAT, is that?
No, ma'am. The TAT is separate from that. This is what we're saying when you're just a sub. Say you just show up one day. There's a certain rate for being a 1-day sub or a 2-day sub. But these folks, like they decide to be the long-term sub for someone who's going to take a sabbatical for a year, or someone a teacher's pregnant and has a child. And in some cases, these people are being, when they're initially hired, even though they're classified as a long-term sub, the principal hires them with the intent to be that long-term position. And what they've had to do is, in order to get that higher pay of a long-term sub, because again, there's a difference between a sub and a long-term sub, they have to do 30 days of work. And what happens is, that's a good kind of thing to make sure someone has skin in the game, so to speak. They're committed, they want to be there. But what we do by making them do that again, year after year, in some cases 2, 3, 4 years, we're basically holding on to their money and waiting to pay them that lump sum in November for their days accrued as a long-term sub, when we don't need to find out if they're going to stay with us or not. We know that they are because they've been with us for that time period. And so instead of saving onto their money, in one case a gentleman told me, he said, Mr. Eloy, because we're holding on to it based on policy, I'm not able to make my car note or my house note. And it's like, okay, well, we know you're gonna get this money in November, but why are we holding on to it for someone who's been an employee for us for 2 or 3 years? It doesn't make any sense. We're penalizing them unfairly, and we just wanna get rid of a policy that wasn't intended to penalize them in the first place, but unfortunately it
It was
is.
a trial period for
Yeah.
both us and
For non-certified teachers, that's totally different.
Yes, ma'am, that's totally different.
You have questions?
I have a question. So this will enable those employees to get paid when now? they-
So
Still the 50.
what happens now, they're still getting paid, but what happens when they come in that summer month, so they don't get paid until they work those hours. And it took them 30 days to get the higher threshold of pay, and so they would get back paid, I think, it was something like a difference of $120 that would be back paid to them.
So they get paid like a lower rate until,
paid.
They get paid that lower rate. In some cases, they were only making a few $100s, especially this year because of COVID. They only had a few days in August, so that their first September check was very low. And so then the difference, that $120 difference, was not paid to them until they made their 30 days, which in this year, I think will be November 15th. What this will do is we'll automatically start them on their previous year, so they'll immediately start making that higher, that $180 rate. And so their first check will be more significant instead of waiting on that lump sum in November or in a typical year, October.
I didn't know if, yeah, that's what I was gonna explain. We pay them for 30 days, $60 a day. If they make to 31 days, we reimburse them $120 a day. But if they've survived the whole summer without being paid, and it's literally, normally in a normal year it's October 15th, but this year it's November 15th before they get any significant money since May of last year.
so one question
May of,
that
yeah.
a long-term sub had asked me, a few different times, are they not able to apply for unemployment during the summertime? Or can they? Can we get clarification on that?
Ms. Page, can you answer that?
They
You can answer
are,
that.
and they do.
They are.
I was gonna say,
They
yeah,
are,
that's-
and they
that's law.
Yeah, well, some don't, like they weren't aware, they thought since they
Yeah.
had to sign a contract saying that they were coming back.
there's no work available, they can.
No, they're
Yeah,
given,
they're,
Okay,
So,
they're
and I think-
given assurance that they will be offered a job if we're in that situation again. And we have been in that situation for the last 10 years.
okay.
I think it's how they qualified at laworks.net.
Yeah.
It's how they fill out that form.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. What disqualifies them from getting, like, benefits, the bonuses? Because they have to do a formal observation, informal observation, they have to do, lesson plans, everything except right now, after school, they don't do
Duty.
what you call it, watch the kids out there.
Duty.
Duty.
So-
Thank you, Ms. Page.
So there, without getting too much in the weeds, this is part of a larger conversation that me and Mr. Wascom have been having about federal labor law and making sure that our district is completely aligned with it. Now that's in regards to.
Sorry guys,
Sorry.
I just sat on my key. Maybe it's not me.
Somebody on the front row.
That was me,
There we go.
sorry about that.
Okay, so that we are in the process of making sure that we are completely aligned, and I think the next topic with that is really more about retirement benefits in terms of if and Mr. Walsh can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm trying to remember a conversation from a few weeks back. We want to make sure that when someone's a long-term sub and then they move into the teaching, that they get credit for years' experience, and so there may be an ability for retirement benefits. And then we've been talking about where that line is, because some of this is based on federal labor law and some of it would be based on district policy. So I think there's two different things. There's benefits, and that will be a discussion that we continue to have with y'all. As far as the tax checks, that was originally laid out for, there was specific verbiage behind that was in the original legislation or proposal, whatever you want to call it, that kind of adheres that to who currently gets it. Did you have anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna stay next to the mic if you had any questions. Basically, it's come up in court cases and labor court cases where, what if somebody worked for us as 4 years as his long-term sub, and then got certified, and then worked for us for 16 years? Are they a 16-year worth of retirement, or are they a 20 years worth of retirement? Well, the law is they're 20 years. The problem is then you have to go and settle up with the retirement fund in order to reimburse them for the 4 years. These are all issues that we will clarify with y'all in the future to set a policy to where we can make this clear. It is not possible for us to take long-term subs and give them full benefits as a certified teacher.
Because they are not certified.
They are not certified. Now, I can tell you, some of these teachers do, some
They
of
do
these
the
not.
same job, but
I
because they don't have the certification,
Exactly.
they're not entitled to the same benefits. That's the law for is the state, is that correct?
You cannot
That's why they
distinguish, you get into elements of what's called discrimination. You can't say, well, this long-term sub is not certified but does the same as, but these long-term subs don't. Because we have qualities of long-term subs. We have some that just have a high school education, some that have master's degrees and still don't have a certification.
So you have long-term subs that with high school, diplomas? I
Yes.
thought you had to have a 4-year.
No, we
Could
have
be
a
long-term
whole
sub.
range of them. We have a range. The bulk of them have 4-year and some have master's programs.
But some have high school.
Some
Yeah,
just
some
have
who
high
just have a high school diploma
Unfortunately,
and
yes,
are long-term subs.
yes,
Yes, ma'am.
and who are dynamic, by the way. That wasn't the
So-
intent.
We have to,
That wasn't the intent, but some of them are dynamic, they are, with the high school diploma.
I'm not.
we have to be careful of getting into what's called discrimination, where we're giving some of our long-term subs certain things and not others. It's either benefits yes for everybody or no for everybody. And at this point in time, to offer benefits, we don't do that at this point in time. We encourage them
But
to
they
get their
were
certification.
they were offering benefits to long-term subs. I think it's if you had like over 30-something hours of work.
I'm not aware of that.
Affordable Care, the Affordable Care Act gave them some insurance benefits.
Yeah, and I think that's the crux of this, is we want to make sure that we're obviously in line with the Affordable Care Act, with labor law, and then also I think the other issue here that we have, and sometimes, and we've talked about this with making sure our principals are in line with what we were saying, is if you are, like Ms. Palmer, you're correct, there are some teachers who are long-term subs who are doing things over and above, but what we have to do is we have to be very careful with making sure principals know that long-term subs are working their hourly rate and are not doing things, although they are a teacher and there are certain maybe expectations that they are not doing things over and above what their definition is. Because, as an hourly employee, if they are going over and above that, then we get into overtime law and things of that nature. So I think what we really have to address is making sure principals are making sure that those long-term subs are working within the current labor law definition and aren't doing things that make them liable to exceed what the current definition is.
Well, when I say over and above and beyond, I'm just saying they have to perform like a certified teacher.
Same job, we're told.
Right, it's the same job, I've done it, it's
And I
the
think-
same job.
I think
You come
the
in,
problem-
you get observed, you get evaluated, it's sent to the state. So I was just looking at, just like you say, if they apply for unemployment in the spring, don't fight them so hard, because not everyone has
Do we
gotten
fight
it.
them?
Not everyone that has applied for unemployment has gotten it. Because there is a form that you sign saying that you, if you're coming back if you would like to for the next following year. So some don't get it, the unemployment. But what I'm just saying is, I think it's a great idea that y'all are giving them the income in August, because that's such a big stretch with not having an income over the summer. But I was just saying if we could look into helping them out more through the year, because when it's rainy days, storm days, ice days, they do not get paid. They do not get paid for holidays. But they are doing teacher jobs. I mean, they are a teacher. In the classroom, they are a teacher. It's not just sitting down, passing out what the other teacher left. No, they're doing teacher work.
And I agree with you. The problem is that they are classified as hourly employees, and so therefore, if you were to pay them for a day that they were not working, then you're paying them. You would be taking the taxpayers' money and giving it for ostensibly for free, for no labor, whereas the teachers are classified as salaried employees, and so that's it.
And I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that. I'm just saying for us to.
I know it's.
Continue to try to help them.
Then we'd open a can of worms because our bus drivers don't get paid for holidays and rainy days and all that neither. We got several other employees the same way, then we're gonna have to be paying, if we pay one group, we're gonna have to pay all the groups.
Just be real careful.
Yeah.
Now, and so
it ain't just long-term subs don't get paid when they don't work. We got several employees, when they don't work, they'll get paid. So we need to watch what we if we wanna pay one group, we gotta pay them all.
And I think the solution to all of this is, and it's kind of easy to say, is to work as diligently and support as much as possible to help these folks get certified, which we have some things in the works with NSU that I won't get into details because they're still in the works, but some things that we are gonna put our money where our mouth is to support these long-term subs so that they can get out of that situation so they won't have to be concerned about some of these issues that we're all talking about right here.
Let me ask one question before, you mentioned about high school, you have, long-term subs that they have high school diplomas. And you have some that have 4-year and some masters. And all of them are paid the same rate of pay?
No, ma'am.
I wanted to,
No, ma'am.
told that, I wanted to know.
Yes, ma'am, and they're paid to some degree based on their level.
Based on their education.
Yes, ma'am, and
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, we've had discussions, although many of those high school candidates are dynamic and we respect them and they're doing great work. That is something that we are trying to get out of is the situation where we have to hire anyone who does not have a bachelor's degree. Again, it's nothing against anyone with just a high school degree, but we obviously want to set the bar higher for ourselves, even with the long-term subs.
Thank you.
Mr. President, that concludes mine.
Thank you, Mr. Dance. Ms. Page, wonderful news, I'm
A
sure.
real person should be.
I do have wonderful news. I believe I feel like Gladys Knight. I have tips now. I have a superintendent and a business director who feels the same passion that I feel when it comes to educating the children, finding the certified teachers, as well as the non-certified teachers. And I just want to say that there was a time when we didn't have to do this. There was a time that we never considered a person with a high school diploma. Not that we don't love them, but we never considered that, considering the fact that this is an educational system. And so this is where we are now. And I have to say that some of them are absolutely amazing. But, and I know I'm going to get in trouble by some or with some, but your insurance doesn't pay for a nurse. I don't care how good you are, there are some things that you have to do to get the same thing. Some of them are better than the teachers. I probably shouldn't say that. However, the certification piece is the deciding thing. There's no way we can give the non-certified people the same benefits as the certified people. And we want to do more for them, but it just cannot be the same. It just cannot be the same.
And that's because of the law, and because they don't have the same amount of education, and that's because of the law. Those two things have to be.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So the other thing is, I do want to say again, I appreciate these two so much because they get it. They get it. We now have a formidable partnership with NSU. We are addressing some things that we need to address. We are working hard to hear their concerns and make some improvements where we can. And the other thing is, he's come up with some ways to try to help them more. And Northwestern has stepped up, whatever you want to call it, to create some situations where we can do more things. In the next 2 weeks, we haven't set a date yet, but in the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a Zoom meeting to address the people who are not certified, if they don't have a degree, to help them get the answers they need, and some funding to get the degree. If they have a degree, to get them certified. If they have certification, to get post-secondary. If they have post-secondary, to become leaders. And that's what we need. So we're really proud of that. We're really proud of that. As far as the rest of this, it's on this sheet. If you have a question, please ask.
Mr. Page, glad you pointed that out, because I told Mrs. Roy and others, we're building an all-star team here in Natchitoches
Yes,
Parish.
sir.
And this parish will be fantastic
Yes, sir.
moving forward.
We feel hopeful. We just know it's going to happen. It is. Question?
Good job.
Thank you.
Mrs. Palmer. Ms. Palmer, in Reverend Harris's absence, would you do the executive report for us, please, ma'am?
Okay, executive report. In absence of Mr. Stephen Harris, chairperson, I will do it tonight. Number one, consider approving grading policy section of the 2020-21 pupil progression plan.
Okay, we had a really good meeting with some folks from all around the district, and they were philosophically on different ends of the spectrum as far as grading goes, and we were able to come to consensus. And we sent this policy out to all the principals, as well as everyone involved in that grading policy meeting. We received feedback, and this is what you're looking at right now. What we did was we defined 3 different things for them. We defined when to use a 0, when to use an incomplete, and when to use an exempt. Because I think there was some issues with that being utilized consistently across the district. We also told them how many grades they needed to have, and we are allowing them to have some autonomy in how they do that, but we said it should be a mixture of homework, quizzes, major grades, projects, etc. We also defined how much bonus could be, because we were seeing across the district some folks were utilizing bonus in a way that was probably not the best as far as, giving hundreds of points. So if you notice there, we came up with the 5% of the cumulative total point could be given as bonus. And then also we defined what reteach retest is. I think last time there were some major concerns with, I'm going to have to reteach retest a student multiple times, and I'm not going to give a 0. And instead what we said is we really lined out when is reteach retest happening, which is anything below a C. And that starts at 74, I believe, for a 100-point grade, or a 37 on a 50-point grade. And that the onus for that is on the student to determine, hey, I want to do this, I failed a test, or I made a D, and go to the teacher. But then we also allowed for some autonomy within the schools to develop their internal policies. One of the issues at hand was that principals said, well, if I've retaught and retested a student 3 times, and do I need to do it a 4th time? And we're allowing flexibility there. Also, the idea that what if a student shows no initiative? They just take the test, put their name on it, crumple it, and throw it in the trash. Do they need to be retaught and retested? So we're really giving broad strokes to the schools, pushing that grades not be punitive, pushing that students be given multiple chances to gain understanding and learn, but then also allowing the schools to kind of set some of the parameters of how that will go. And then also saying that, hey, you need to have at least 9 grades, whether you're in the high school or the K through 8, and that's gonna be 1 grade per week for the K through 8, and that's gonna be 2 grades per week for the 4.5 week grading period that you see at the high schools. There's some more nuance, but I'm not gonna read everything to you verbatim, but if you have any questions between now and Thursday, please don't hesitate to reach out. But again, this was formed by, we literally had people on opposite ends of the spectrum who totally disagreed with each other, but through about a 1.5 hour meeting, we were able to gain consensus, which was good for a myriad of reasons, let alone the grading policy.
Dr. Eloy, this is part of that pull-out program, policy that we had earlier in the August, September timeframe, is that not correct?
When you say pull-out program, what are you referring to?
We pulled out, we had a policy that you rolled out to us in August and September, district policy, and this is where you said you were revisiting the grading.
Correct. So, and the other thing, most of the teachers are doing this in some form or fashion, but what this is supposed to entail is to put it into policy to say, the major crux of this is if a student fails. If a student fails, what we typically have done in years past, and not just talking about Natchitoches, but the United States, is we say, student didn't learn that. So it's 2 plus 2. Student fails that test, I guess they never learned how to add 2 plus 2 in it, that it equals 4. What we're saying is this is not to inflate grades, it's not to make things more difficult on teachers. What it is to say, when a student fails, that really means they did not master that topic. They did not understand that standard. And so it's meant to say, okay, you didn't understand that, we are going to give you another chance at learning. And we're not saying that they have to get 100% if they did that. What we're saying is that they could get a portion of those points back. And that's what a lot of good teachers are already doing. We just feel as though we need to support that with policy.
I have a very, very basic question. So when we vote on this Thursday night and it gets approved, what is the standard for communicating this with teachers in schools, and when is it effective if it's voted on Thursday?
So when we talked to principals, and we actually had some teachers and assistant principals and everything, and they came to us with the first, because the first thing we said was, hey, you're not going to give the zeros. And that was, they came to us and they said, it's not going to work for us. And they gave really good, legitimate reasons. And so what we did is, principals already have this. And I would think some of them have communicated it with their teachers and leadership teams as this is what's there, and some of them probably haven't. So if this is going out, we feel very strongly that this needs to happen soon, because what we're seeing, and this is, again, this is statewide, we are seeing failure reports that are much higher than usual. And that's obviously related to COVID, virtual school, everything you can think of, we're seeing more failures. And so we feel as though it needs to be enacted soon. But what we're doing here is we really want the schools to, we are very sensitive to the idea that anything new coming out, even if it's really not something added to your day-to-day, it feels like it's being added to your day-to-day. And we do not want to, increase that load in any way, shape, or form. So we're rolling it out. We would like to roll it out as soon as the second 9 weeks, with the caveat that the principals need to put their local contextual spin on it. And so that part of it very much needs to be a collaborative effort between the principal and their staff, where they say, okay, this is the broad strokes that the district has given us. How do we implement this here? And what I've heard, from the teachers I've spoken to, from my own wife, is you're not recreating the wheel. We're doing this to some extent already, and we're glad you're not forcing us into issues where we can't give a 0. So a lot of this isn't really even putting new stuff on it. It's defining when to use these things. Okay, I've always used I's and exempts, but I should only be using an exempt when a student is, they come into school 2 weeks after the grading period because they just moved here from Montana. Of course, you should exempt that first unit test that they weren't a part of. You're not going to reteach all that stuff immediately. You're going to do that, piecemeal throughout the semester. So that's not going to add anything on them. And for the most part, the same thing with the incomplete. The thing that may add something to them, to some of the folks, is that reteach, retest. for those who aren't currently doing it. For those who aren't currently doing that, we feel as though they need to make that work with their principal and say, hey, I'd like to do reteach, retest only on Mondays, because that's the day I stay after 2 hours of the day, and I want it to be, it's the high school level, I think they should have to stay after school for them. I'm fine with that. You're still doing it, but you're saying, you have to make it work for your classroom, for your school. So that's a very long answer to say we would like to do it as soon as possible, with the caveat being it needs to be contextualized to the little local school. That's a whole lot more than you asked for, I think. I do that a lot, I'm sorry.
Number 2, consider entering into executive session to discuss the superintendent's 6-month evaluation by the school board.
Yes, you have a evaluation in your packet, and I'd like us to, we sent it out a week ago by email to all the board members. I'd like everyone to just take a second and your thoughts on this document. Is this something we want to use? Last month, we had a much smaller document, and Ms. Broadway wanted to make it a little more robust. And so we've got one that deals with faculty and staff relations, community relations, educational leadership, government and board relations, and business and finance. And so I'd like to hear some thoughts from some board members.
Well, I just want to say that I reviewed it in length. I spent lots of time going over every single thing on here. And I really think it's a wonderful document that we could use for years and years to come. To me, this pretty much sets the standard of what a performance review should look like. There's like no stone unturned.
Thank you. I would say that I did not include anything about data just because
Yeah, we don't have it.
the current year,
That
you
needs
know,
to be
but,
added later.
that would be something so simple to add in.
And that's part of the contractual language, and so, yeah, that'll have to be added, but yeah, you're right.
Well, I don't know if it was your intention, but I like that it seems very aligned to the Compass Leader rubric, or similar in nature, and so I always like that because that's how we judge our principals, and that's what we should be modeling. It's also how we observe our teachers, so I think it's good to have alignment there.
Just addressing all the major areas that need to be addressed when we do an evaluation.
Okay, board members, would each of you like to take this home and bring it back Thursday night completed? And we can, of course, you'll sign your copy, but we would like to, I'd like to offer that we would come to consensus on each one of these scores. Does that sound like a good idea?
In executive session.
Well, it'll be an executive session. I'd like for us to come to consensus when we discuss each line item and come up with a score as a board. Does that meet everyone?
Yeah, that sounds like we'll be here till midnight. There's a lot of lines on here.
Well, if you've done your due diligence and homework, it really won't take that long.
Well, yeah, we can. We'll just need pick a person as a tallier to tally all this up.
Yeah, we'll just have a score sheet and do exactly what you said. Have a copy for the final score, the overall score, and then each one of us will have our own copy. And if we've done our homework, walking in Thursday night, I don't think it will be that long, because we need to discuss these items.
No, we definitely do, and I don't think it's a matter of someone not doing their homework at all. It's just, the semantics of it, have it set up where somebody's actually doing the tallying, kind of like we do student of the year, have one person do all the math part of it.
We do that. Does that sound okay to everyone? Thank you, Ms. Rowland, for pulling this together. Okay, board members, one other item, Ms. Palmer, do you have any other items on your list?
No, that would be it, other than adjournment.
Well, before we do, Mrs. Rebel has included in your packet, some of you may have a shortfall in some training, for the year, and, check that list. It's dated on 10/21/2020. She's gone to the trouble of pulling all of our training out of required training from the state. Make sure yours is up to date before the sunset of 12/31, 2020. Any questions on that?
How many we need? 6?
6. Well, you gotta have, some of them are specific.
You gotta have ethics, and you gotta have some others, and you gotta have, the,
Campaign,
Campaign finance.
campaign finance.
that's CF.
And so Mrs. Rebels is gonna check to see when we were at LSBA, if we did not actually receive it from the campaign finance. Cause I remember as a group, do y'all remember as a group, we went through it?
I don't remember it being this year. I remember it being there last year.
Okay, well, that might be, that's what I
I
said.
don't
might be.
remember it being offered this
Okay.
last year.
Well, that's fine.
Cause
Not to be
with the
wrong.
campaign finance thing, it's just, well, every 4 years or every
Yeah,
year?
it's every 4 years, ethics is every year. If you didn't have a sticky note on your summary, then you're okay. So if you had a sticky note, I indicated what was missing, and if you think that there's an error, just let me know. I'll be calling Stephanie on Wednesday at LSBA to ask her to look at that, and then I'm gonna look at it again too, to see if they've updated it, because I believe I printed those a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you did, it's almost 2 weeks. Thank
Yeah,
you
so
very much.
they may have updated, because I don't know if the Pineville, training is on there yet. So I will look at it again before Thursday night meeting.
I don't think that's on.
Okay, it's probably not, I printed it a couple of weeks ago.
Is the one from last Monday,
The one from Pineville,
Trailblazer?
the one from Pineville, that's what I'm saying, I'm not sure if it's probably not on there yet, but I'm gonna call and
Now,
check.
Ms. Rebels, she's saying Trailblazer, you're saying.
What is 19 of it?
Oh, no, that's not on the sheet
I
that I
didn't
give
think
you. No, ma'am, it's not.
Mr. Squire, you have a message for us? You have a message for us at the very end of the agenda?
Was it a gentleman? I told you that guy too.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Signature, your text earlier, so Mrs. Bennett.